Good afternoon, everyone. Get started. We're going to start today with the Department of Service and Civic Innovation. Mr. Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hold on, what do I hear? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Jacob Cash, and I'll be giving the budget presentation for the Department of Service and Civic Innovation, or DSCI. DSCI is one of the newer agencies in the state, and it combines existing volunteer programs with 2 service year option pathways that were established by the SERV Act and related legislation. If you join me on the cover page, you can see that the fiscal 2027 allowance is about $70 million. However, I'll point out most of the special funds that are reflected here are double counted with general funds. So Exhibit 1 on page 2 actually shows what the budget looks like without those double counts. The fiscal 2027 allowance increases by $6.5 million in total funds compared to 2026, or by about 16% to $47.6 million. On page 3, there is some information on federal dollars that were at risk last year due to the federal government canceling federal fiscal 2024 grant funding that were remaining balances in the ongoing grant cycle. Court orders required AmeriCorps to reinstate that funding, and then federal fiscal 25 dollars were also at risk of withholding, but those funds have since been awarded. And those funds support training and assistance for AmeriCorps programs statewide, and DSCI coordinates that. Exhibit 2 on page 4 shows an overview of agency spending this year. Maryland Corps participation stipends, completion awards, and wraparound services costs, they total about $26.4 million. And then the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism, which coordinates the federal dollars, administers about $6 million in grants. Then to actually administer these programs, DSCI receives about $15 million for administrative expenses, most of which is $9 million for personnel. Exhibit 3 on page 5 shows the proposed budget change of $15 million increase. I'll point out that the Maryland Corps grants account for the majority of that increase, and there is a double counting of funds going on there. $7 million of the increase is a mandated appropriation to the MSY Pathway Fund. That is now $20 million mandated every year, as well as the additional costs to carry out the YA pathway and supporting the costs associated with that growth. New positions in the budget account for $1 million in additional funding, and those are associated, again, with the YA participation growth. At the bottom of page 6 is a discussion of that YA participation program and the impact of the proposed BRFA. Current law requires DSCI to implement a target for the YA pathway. DLS does not consider this to be a mandated appropriation, and there is no contingent reduction associated with this BRFA provision, but the BRFA does reduce participation targets. In fiscal 27, that reduces by 400, and fiscal 28 reduces by 450 the number of individuals that they would have participating within the young adult program. These reduced levels form the basis of the current budget, which mostly impacts the Maryland Corps grants and the number of personnel dedicated to Maryland Corps. Exhibit 4 on page 7 shows the funding without double counts that are available in each year for the Pathway program. And the current budget plan assumes consistent growth in the grant funding, as well as a large growth in administrative expenses, mostly related to new positions and contracts. Personnel begins on page 8, so I'll be going into more depth on the growth in positions. DSCI is adding 10 regular positions this year, which includes 9 new service success coaches. Those are the main ones administering the Maryland Corps program. There's also 1 new administrator being added. Underpinning those projections are the coach to participant ratio of 1 to 50. and a total of 1,100 participants. This adds $1 million in total costs for the personnel. And at the same time, there has been a decrease in vacancies. There's only one vacancy for service success coaches, but there are 6 administrative vacancies in the department. Moving on, furthermore, DSEI has not been meeting participation goals. Exhibit 5 on page 10 compares the goals to final participation levels. The goals were 300 for the first year, 650 for the second year, and 850 for the third year. I'll point out that the second year, those were not statutory goals, but they were internal goals, and that's basically the goal that the budget was based under. DSEI, however, like I said, was not able to meet these goals, and in Class 3, they implemented a rolling enrollment process or a rolling application process to increase enrollment. By the start of Class 3, there were 588 participants that had been matched with the host site partner out of the goal of 850. By the end of October, they were still off of that goal by 155 participants, although they did have enough host site partners slots that were available to meet those goals. And by the end of 2025, DSEI reached 758 participants, or about 90% of that goal level. So all things considered, DLS recommends reducing the participation targets by implementing a 1-year delay in the growth that's proposed in the BRFA. That would allow more time to study the program, to assess the processes and relationships that could use improvement, and reduce the impact of this discretionary spending on the budget. To accomplish this, DLS recommends removing or deleting the additional Maryland Core grant funding and new positions, which totals $8.5 million in general funds, $4.4 million in special funds for the Maryland Core grants, and $1 million for the 10 new positions. Key observation 1 begins on page 11. And Exhibit 6 compares the 2 pathways to each other, provide more information on what differentiates the 2 programs. There is a joint application process, and DSEI sorts applicants into each program. And there was a piece of legislation last session that changed some of the requirements of each program, including now allowing the pathway funds to be used interchangeably between the programs, as well as changing eligibility by implementing age requirements and changing residency requirements, as well as repealing the authorization for completion awards to be provided in a Maryland 529 accounts for higher education expenses. At the bottom of page 13 begins a discussion on the subsidization of wages by partner organizations. Stipends are currently $15 an hour, or the applicable minimum wage. For some counties, it's higher. And DSEI pays 2/3, and the partner organizations pay 1/3. Committee narrative in the 2024 Joint Chairman's Report requested DSEI to create a plan to have employers pay a greater share of that stipend. And DSEI shared a few options, but did not settle on one of them. And so DLS is now asking DSEI to update the committees on that wage subsidization, their progress in lowering the subsidy, and the cost-sharing arrangements in the current budget. Finally, I'll point you to the recommended actions, which are on page 16. I've already mentioned these, but they include reducing funding for the Maryland Core grants that are growing in 27, as well as the 10 new positions, and the BRFA provision that would lower the participation targets. However, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions for our analyst? Thank you very much. Secretary? Bring up your team, if you like, whoever. A lot of people signed up, but I think they're mostly your team. Is that right?
If it's okay with you, it'll be me and Deputy Secretary Sarah Fleming for now.
Sure.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
All right. Hi, Mr. Chair. Hi, honorable members. Thank you for having us here. For the record, my name is Johnny Dorsey, and I'm the Acting Secretary of the Maryland Department of Service and Civic Innovation. Thank you to the people around the table who voted me out of committee last night. Hopefully, I will not be acting for that much longer, so I appreciate that. With me is Sarah Fleming, as I said, who will help in the second part here. We have some other colleagues who may help with some questions. I do want to begin by acknowledging our DLS analyst, Jacob Cash. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Sandy Henderson, our DBM analyst, who has been great as well. And our other DBM colleagues, we also appreciate. We also want to thank the administration for our budget proposal, which did take into account the state's fiscal realities by including a target for the young adult service year option pathway of 1,100 members for FY27. This is lower than the originally planned 1,500 members and significantly reduced the general fund request. As you just heard from Mr. Cash and is on page 16 in his analysis, DLS has proposed a further reduction, freezing our growth into the following year and holding us at 750 service year option members in class 4, which will start this upcoming August. It would also maintain current staffing levels. While we understand that these recommendations would decrease the general fund costs, we respectfully disagree with them and remain committed to increasing opportunities for Marylanders to serve in this upcoming year. We believe that the governor's budget did strike the right balance and set the right target. I'm extremely optimistic about the direction of this agency. We are ready to go to the scale intended in the governor's budget, and doing so will matter for the young people who serve, for the communities they assist, and for the entire state that benefits from this rising generation. In the first 2.5 years, we've grown from a concept others around the table also contributed to, thank you for that, into a real program that is achieving the 3 goals of the SERVE Act: addressing urgent community needs, equipping the members with skills and pathways to meaningful careers, and building connections across Maryland's diverse communities through that shared service. I want to give credit also to my predecessor and to the great team. I'm a little over 3 months into this acting role, and most credit goes to them, of course. In addition to the written testimony, I want to highlight some of the results from those first classes. We now have 710 alumni and 758 members started in this 3rd cohort. Class 1 has a completion rate of 83.6, Class 2 a completion rate of 80.5. Those rates compare very favorably to similar programs across the country. Over 170 Class 1 members and 380 Class 2 members earned U.S. Department of Labor registered apprenticeship credentials. Class 2 host site partners reported over 85% of graduates added organizational capacity, and that 85% of graduates enhanced the impact they have in communities. We don't yet have a stat for this part, but much of the texture we get back from partners is that it's the lived experience of our members that help contribute so much to that impact. 85% of graduates and host site partners are either likely or highly likely to recommend this program. Our testimony does include some descriptions of the type of work we do, but I'll quickly hit on a few of my favorite examples. This year we launched the Maryland Youth Mental Health Corps. This is a corps of young people going back and serving in schools and connecting young people to community-based health resources and helping them launch careers in service. I have spent time with this cohort. It's exactly what you would want to see. Young people who are very serious about their work they are doing on mental health in communities and who are excited to continue doing this work going forward. We expanded our work with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, expanding the number of young people who are working on climate and resource preservation. And last, one of the real exciting Maryland government partnerships is with the Department of Disabilities and the Department of Information Technology. It's our IT Accessibility Corps, ensuring that our digital resources and technology are accessible to every citizen across the state. Our members are making progress on core state priorities. They're launching careers of impact, and they're working shoulder to shoulder with Marylanders representing all walks of life. On that note, once again, the members represent all 24 jurisdictions of the state, fulfilling one of those key tenets of the SERVE Act by serving in every region. Class 3 members serve with over 200 host site partners representing nonprofit organizations, businesses, and more than 30 state and local government agencies. As we look to Class 4, we're making some significant strategic shifts towards larger scale partners. This is my biggest bet in my early days at the agency. we are aligning with major employers that can help us continue to maximize our impact in communities and make sure we're connecting young people to careers in high need and high growth areas. To that end, we've got fantastic collaboration across the government on 3 working groups: health, education, and technology, to scale up further in those areas. I'll just end by saying again, I'm extremely optimistic about being able to continue to grow and to reach the target set out in the governor's allowance, and I'm excited to serve more Marylanders by doing so. And I'll now turn it over to Deputy Secretary Sarah Fleming to zero in on DLS's request for response in the analysis.
Thank you, Acting Secretary Dorsey. For the record, my name is Sarah Fleming, and I serve as the department's Deputy Secretary. On page 13 to 14 of the analysis, DLS requested an update on progress in reducing the level of wage subsidization to maximize the use of funding for the program and assumptions related to the share of wages assumed to be paid for by host sites in the fiscal 2027 budget. For Class 3, the 89.2% enrollment rate reflected real challenges, but not a lack of demand. As the DLS analysis itself notes, the number of applicants accepted into the program exceeded the participation targets by a ratio of more than 2 to 1. As this demonstrates, there was an overwhelming interest from young Marylanders to serve. The gap was in our capacity to match accepted applicants to host site partners quickly enough and in a way that led to confirmed enrollment. Specifically, the historic rate of grant terminations from federal agencies in the spring of 2025 negatively impacted the Maryland nonprofit sector, making cost sharing significantly more challenging. We have diagnosed this and are making a significant strategic pivot for Class 4. We are investing in higher capacity partnerships with organizations that can absorb a larger number of members with strong supervision, clear community impact, and pathways to careers. We are also focused on sectors with ongoing hiring needs, opportunities for members to drive impact, and work aligned to core state priorities. As one example of this effort, we'll share we have launched 3 cross-government working groups in education, health, and technology, as Acting Secretary Dorsey mentioned, to develop new partnerships that will secure additional placements for Class 4. It's important to note that this effort will not displace our current partners who seek to continue, but constitute the bulk of additional growth. We are confident that this approach, more placements with higher capacity partners while retaining the strong community-based partners who have been essential to the program, will allow us to meet the participation targets in the governor's budget. The demand from young Marylanders is there and only growing. Our job is to build the infrastructure to match it. This is the department's top priority, and we are confident. For Class 3, DSCI implemented a tiered cost-sharing structure requiring host site partners to contribute between 20% and 100% of member wages, depending on their organizational size, with a blended average target of 33% of employer cost share. Our latest analysis of the percent we hit this year for Class 3 is 33.8% cost sharing. For Class 4, DSCI is committed to continuing progress on employer cost sharing. Our strategic pivot toward higher capacity partners supports this goal, as larger organizations such as school districts, hospital systems, and state agencies are better positioned to cover a greater share of member compensation. We do want to be transparent. Reaching a 50% cost-sharing budget is an incredibly hard target, and also one we remain focused on making progress towards as quickly as possible. Our independent evaluation partners at the University of Maryland Do Good Institute have looked into this question and benchmarked against several programs. They have yet to find one that has hit this precise target. We are committed to increasing host site partners' contributions over time. On pages 14 to 15 of the DLS analysis, there's discussion regarding the Governor's Office on Service and Volunteerism performance data and how GOSV will maintain elevated levels of grant funding. GOSV total funds granted to community-based organizations were $8.2 million in fiscal 2025 and are estimated at $7.4 million in fiscal 2026. The slight decline reflects the conclusion of American Rescue Plan Act funding and the transition to a new federal grant cycle. GOSV continues to focus on strategic investments that sustain elevated levels of AmeriCorps members and volunteers statewide. On federal funding, we want to acknowledge and appreciate the DLS analysis thorough account of the fiscal 2025 disruptions. DSCI faced the potential loss of approximately $6.9 million in federal fiscal 2024 AmeriCorps grants and $7.3 million in federal fiscal 2025 funding due to federal policy changes. Both funding streams were ultimately secured through a court order directing AmeriCorps to reinstate these grants in the former case and continued engagement in the latter. In federal fiscal year 2026, the federal grant-making cycle is months behind schedule, with the notice of funding opportunity released by the AmeriCorps agency in January rather than the prior September. This threatens AmeriCorps programs' ability to start their program on the anticipated timeline of mid-August, as well as their overall level of uncertainty. DSCI will continue to support Maryland's AmeriCorps programs and take efforts to maximize federal funding wherever possible. This experience underscores both the resilience of our team and the importance of the state investment in Maryland Corps Service Year option as a foundation that does not depend solely on the federal funding environment. On page 16, the DLS analysis cites the lack of a program evaluation as one basis for its recommendation to reduce funding. We want to provide important context on the evaluation timeline established by the General Assembly. The SERV Act, Chapter 99 of 2023, requires that DSCI procure the services of an independent evaluator by June 1st, 2027, with findings and recommendations due to the Governor and General Assembly by July 1st, 2028, and a public online dashboard of key performance indicators by October 1st, 2028. As we recall and understand the deliberations, the General Assembly, working closely with the administration, set this timeline with the understanding that a meaningful evaluation requires sufficient program maturity and data, specifically multiple completed cohorts with post-program outcome data, as well as enough time to work through early pivoting startups require, such as the pivot discussed in the host site partner section. DSCI is on track to meet these statutory deadlines. We have secured a partnership with the University of Maryland Do Good Institute to produce process and impact evaluations in advance of the SERV Act requirement. The agency has received a draft of the first process evaluation and expects a finalized report shortly. DSCI prioritized securing an independent evaluation partner well before the statutory requirement to ensure insights from UMD, in addition to ongoing internal DSCI strategic analysis of programmatic data, which drove programmatic design over the first few classes. In the interim, we share the committee's interest in leading indicators. As Secretary Dorsey mentioned earlier, early data from the first two completed classes regarding completion and workforce credential attainment is promising. We look forward to building on this foundation with the independent evaluation the statute requires. DSCI shares a passion and commitment to use evidence and data, and we will gladly discuss it with anyone interested.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. I think we can end there by just saying again, we are excited about this next phase of the work, very optimistic about where we are going together, and ready to take your questions.
Thank you. Senator.
Thank you. Not a question, but a comment that I'd welcome a response to, and it won't surprise you, Mr. Secretary, or anybody else. My big concern, I like the program, but my big concern from the beginning is the wage subsidies for two reasons. One, it's a lot of money, and to scale, it's the biggest constraint on being able to scale is paying wage subsidies. So the faster we bring down the wage subsidies, the more capacity we have to scale, number one. Number two is, one major point of the program, and certainly the one that I'm most sympathetic to, is helping young people get on a path to success. And having young people hired into jobs that are essentially make-work jobs, that are not jobs that the economy is driving. The employer wasn't really going to hire anybody for the job anyway. I think it's kind of cheating the young people. A work experience for a year is a good thing, better than another kind of experience for a year. But if we can reduce the wage subsidies faster and attract more employers who actually want the work done, I think it'll help scale the program, and it will also help the young people. Happy for thoughts on that or not?
I'll just say, Mr. Vice Chair, well, first I'll say to the rest of the members that the vice chair has been kind enough to talk about this with me since the transition when we were first working on this design. We talked again on Friday night about this, which I sincerely appreciate. And I think we all share the same goal of we need to get as much cost sharing as we can as we continue to scale. I believe very strongly in this model. I think some amount of support, especially as we are targeting young people disconnected from employment and higher education, is going to continue to make sense. And yet, like, we are committed to finding more and more ways that we can align with workforce needs and find ways to get more cost sharing. I mean, just for the rest, one thing that we talked about last week is that as we scale more in healthcare, we're aligning as much as we can with where we can bill for services provided by members. There's some really innovative efforts around community health worker billing, near-peer resource billing. And we're in cohort 3. It's definitely going to take some time to continue to build out those sustainable models, but I'm very optimistic about doing it. And share your belief, I want to scale this as much as we can. Like, the total addressable market of young people who could serve in this program is big. And so we want to build as sustainable a model as we can to keep going and keep meeting the demand from young people. And I look forward to many more conversations about exactly this and how to get there.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Is there, is there other people who wanted to testify, or?
Yes.
Then certainly feel free to come on up. Anybody who's willing, who wanted to testify, come up.
Hello, my name's Kyle Learman. I'm proud to serve as the chair of the Maryland State Service Commission. It's great to see you all. Want to thank the chair and the vice chair for holding this hearing. I took on this role at the request of Secretary Montero, and am proud to continue serving as chair under Johnny's leadership. I took on this role at a time when the federal government's attacking the very idea of public service in every which way. Don't have to tell each and every one of you that. And I think by the state continuing to invest and increasing their investments in public service, as Senator Rosapep said, not only are you investing in the impact of the work, but you're investing in the next generation of change makers across the state. When I was thinking about presenting here, I thought about my first job as an organizer on a campaign. And if I hadn't had that opportunity, I'm not sure my career would have turned into a career of organizing in public service. And I'm sure each and every one of you has a different story about your first job in public service and how that sent you down the path to get you where you are today and serving where you are today. I'll just say growing and supporting the State Service Commission and funding service across the state will help programs like the Montgomery County Renters Alliance, which does outreach to community members and renters, making sure that they understand their rights across the county, the Prathertown Community Development Corporation, the Conflict Resolution Center of Montgomery County, and an incredible program in Howard County called Howard EcoWorks, which employs folks in helping maintain the natural landscapes and community areas across Howard County in a beautiful way. So just wanted to come here to show my support for the commission, for the incredible work of the team and all of our partners that we support throughout the State Service Commission. And thank you all for continuing your investment in making sure that Maryland continues to be a leader in service across the country. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Nee, and I'm here today to testify as an alum of the Maryland Corps Service Year Option inaugural cohort. I'm not originally from Maryland. I've spent most of my life living in Michigan and Indiana, as well as abroad in China, until 6 years ago when I moved to Annapolis to pursue my undergraduate degree at St. John's College. After graduation, I wanted to stay. My upbringing instilled in me the value of service, and I believe it is our civic duty to contribute in whatever capacity we can to our community. In my case, I wanted to pursue a career in civil service. So, when I've heard about the creation of DSCI and its new service year program, I knew it was a perfect fit for me. As a member of the newly restructured Maryland Corps Division under the service year program, I was placed with the Anne Arundel County Executive's Office as a Government Relations and Communications Assistant. Monthly DSCI training and mentorship from my host site helped me develop confidence and gain valuable working experience in applying theories that I have learned in the classroom into practice. This is not, as some might have presumed, a glorified internship where you just shadow some employee for a few months, work on some fictitious projects, and then call it a success. When I saw the communications materials that I had prepared during my very first week were actually being used by the county in a new policy implementation effort, there was a great sense of pride I never felt before. This reinforced the idea that it isn't just some campaign slogan. Yes, I can indeed make a difference. We can all make a difference. I can assure you I'm not the only one. Throughout the program, I met many amazing young adults, from aspiring teachers to nurses to car mechanics, who all want to make an impact in their own unique way. And it was DSCI who helped all of us begin our career. After program completion, the office hired me as a full-time legislative assistant for the county executive, where I have been working ever since for the past 2 years, contributing to the local legislative process as a proud Marylander that today calls Annapolis home. This is all possible because of DSCI. As this trailblazing program approaches its 4th year, a critical moment of expansion to provide opportunities to many more Maryland students and young adults, support from all of us is needed more than ever.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chidera Harley, and I completed the Maryland Core and Service Year Option Program serving full-time at Bowie State University in the President's Office. After graduating from Morgan State University, sorry, can you hear me better? Okay. After graduating from Morgan State University and obtaining my bachelor's degree in marketing, I had the opportunity to work at Maryland Public Television to go through the Maryland Core application to make it easier for the younger generation to apply for the Service Year Option Program. Through this, I submitted my own application after realizing how impactful this opportunity could be for myself. In my placement, training mattered. I received structured instruction in workplace navigation, financial literacy, goal setting, public speaking, and civic engagement, all that I applied every day. My core duties working at Bowie State University included working directly with the president, helping with critical administrative tasks for the president's office, supporting university-wide events and public engagement efforts, and while getting insight from staff and faculty and students to enhance Bowie's story. Growing up as a young African-American woman in Maryland, I found it hard to find my own light. I was the youngest of 3, and at an early age, it was hard for me to speak up and share my creativity. When I first started at Bowie, I felt the same way I felt when I was 5 years old. Being the youngest one in the room has never been easy. However, through the training and guidance of my mentors and leader in this program, I was able to gain more confidence in myself. I was one of the youngest full-time workers in my office and soon learned that age does not equal inability. This experience has also changed my career trajectory. By the end of the 9 months, I had a stronger professional network, career goals, and documented skills that I can take into my next steps at Bowie State University. I have now been promoted to the Department of Information and Technology as a digital communication and training specialist, where I am currently working in the field in which I attained my degree. A service year is just a workforce development and direct service delivery. It helps fill real capacity gaps in nonprofits, schools, and governments while giving young people a chance to have paid on-ramp careers, apprenticeships, and to further their education. I'm excited to share I'll be able to further my education with the completion award and earn my master's degree. This is why this opportunity is so important for everyone. For those who just recently graduated from high school, those still figuring out their pathways, and those who have attained a degree and need financial support on their next steps. Anyone can be successful in this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing your stories. That's great.
Thank you.
Any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I think I've mentioned before when this issue of EcoWorks has come up that I can see it out of my window in my condo in Columbia, though a good project right behind the building. So I know good things happen. Anyone else on this? Okay. Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to the State Reserve Fund. Mr. Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Jacob Cash, and I'll be giving the presentation for the State Reserve Fund. Joining me on the cover page, the fiscal 2027 allowance increases by $58 million over fiscal 26 to just over $126 million. This chart reflects that $450 million to the rainy day fund has been cut in the BRFA. That mandated appropriation has been reduced in the past few years, and DLS is recommending to take that reduction directly in the budget rather than having it be contingent on the passage of the BRFA. You'll also note on the cover page that $82 million in special funds is in the allowance. This is special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, and I'll be discussing those purposes shortly. On page 2, I'll point you out to, I'll point you out to those special funds right now. There's $42 million in deficiencies. Actually, sorry, excuse me. Just a second. So there's $42 million in deficiencies. The first $30 million is for DPSCS maintenance projects, and the second $12 million is for Allegheny County repair costs. These are related to flooding that has happened in the county. There has been a denial of federal funding for that, and so this state funding is in part supplementing those repair costs, and it won't fully replace all of the repair costs. Exhibit 1 on page 3 shows the impact of the governor's proposed budget on the rainy day fund balance. The current plan transfers $38 million to the general fund in fiscal 27. There's also interest being generated on the overall balance, and so there's a net increase despite that transfer of about $30 million. And there's no planned appropriation to the fund. As I mentioned at the outset, the mandated appropriation of $450 million is cut in the BRFA, and we're recommending to take that cut directly. Exhibit 2 on page 4 shows the ending balance of the rainy day fund as a percentage of general fund revenues. The 27 budget assumes that we will end fiscal 27 with 8% in the rainy day fund. That's higher than the Spending Affordability Committee recommendation of 7.5%. And due to lower general fund surpluses, consistent transfers from the fund, and no new appropriations, there has been a reduction since the peak in fiscal 23. Now Exhibit 3 on page 5 shows the funding in fiscal 27, particularly in the dedicated purpose account. All of these items are new. The largest set of appropriations is $82 million from Strategic Energy Investment Funds, or SEIF, and these invest in climate-related programs and to carry out climate-related laws. The largest portion of that funding is $42 million for higher education research. These are grants looking into energy, resilience, and climate. And then there's also $25 million to set up the new Strategic Energy Planning Office that was established during the 2025 special session, and $15 million for grid enhancing and advanced transmission technologies. That's comprised of $10 million to research the technologies and $5 million to incorporate them into existing utilities. For the higher ed research funds, DLS recommends deleting those funds as it is it's a one-time infusion of funding, and it's not going to replace any ongoing revenue streams that are actually what researchers rely on to carry out their work. DLS also recommends modifying the contingent language in the budget on these other two SEIF items, requiring that that legislation be passed, expanding the allowable uses of SEIF to include these particular purposes. The way that the BRFA provision is currently written, any expansion in SEIF would allow this funding to be used, and we want it to be specific. Moving on to the general fund appropriations on page 7, $30 million is added for to the DPA for legislative priorities. We're recommending to make a technical cut to this $30 million so that it can be re-added, however so the legislature decides. There's also $5 million added to the DPA for repeat audit findings. I will be discussing that a little bit more in depth in the DBM secretary analysis, since it is closely related to issues there. $4.6 million is added for certifying community behavioral health clinics under the federal demonstration program, and MTH will have more information on that. And then there's $2.5 million to address unforeseen costs and circumstances associated with implementing the One Big Beautiful Bill. This funding would mostly be for consultant costs. Then there's $2 million for state fiscal leadership capacity and recruitment. I'll also be discussing this further in the DBM secretary analysis since it touches base on some issues there. Next on page 8, I'll point out that there was an error in the budget books regarding the Fiscal Responsibility Fund. $9.1 million is currently earmarked in 2026 for the Interagency Commission on School Construction for public school construction. But those funds have been inadvertently marked for transfer to the general fund at the end of 2026. So it's necessary to make a BRFA amendment to reduce the amount that's transferred from the Fiscal Responsibility Fund. Exhibit 4 on page 9 shows the DPA fund balance transfers that are currently proposed in the BRFA. The total amount transferred is $1 million, 1.04. And these are all small balances remaining in a variety of fiscal 2023 legislative priorities. And actually, DLS is recommending to increase the amount of funding that is being taken from the dedicated purpose account. On page 12, you can see where the additional accounts or purposes that have funding that DLS believes could be removed and transferred to the general fund. That includes a little under $1 million for comptroller cybersecurity purposes, about $200,000 for rebuilding state government, and about $7,000 for food bank assistance. Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows the $89.3 million that are remaining in the TPA for past appropriations, as well as the $163.5 added this year. Many of the remaining funds are for long-term purposes or commitments such as apprenticeship growth in the state and relocation of agencies from state center, as well as the CEF funds that were provided in 2024 to implement the Climate Solutions Now Act. There's also a variety of other legislative priorities with funds remaining. And as I just mentioned, DLS recommends transferring a total of $1.14 million in that balance to the general fund. Related to the issue of accounting remaining balances in the DPA, on page 12, there's an issue here about the difficulties DLS has had in tracking each balance. In particular, there are discrepancies in funds reported to be transferred from the DPA to the general fund, as well as transfers of funding back to the DPA that were unused from agencies. The comptroller reports on DPA transactions at closeout every year, but they only report the user agency reporting funds, and they don't actually report the purpose the funds are associated with. DLS has tried to get that information to account for funds that we weren't able to definitively categorize, but we haven't been successful. And there's still about $7.7 million in 2025 returns that we're not confident about. There's also funding that's being transferred this year from assisted living facilities balance, but DLS was not able to confirm that balance was there. Therefore, we recommend adding a section to the budget bill that restricts funds in DBM and in the comptroller budgets, pending an accounting of funds returned to the DPA by purpose for the last 5 years. The language further expresses intent that the comptroller includes either the purpose or the amendment number in the annual closeout report so that those balances can be tracked. Finally, moving to page 14, this lists the operating budget recommended actions. The first is related to the directly deleting the $450 million rainy day fund appropriation. The second is deleting the $42 million for higher education research that we mentioned at the beginning. The technical adjustment are to remove the $30 million in legislative priorities so that can be re-added, and then the section in the back of the bill related to accounting for the DPA. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Did you mention when you were going through that, I apologize if I missed it, that $5 million for parole and probation staffing? Did you talk about that at all?
Mm-hmm. That was added last year. They haven't used it yet. They haven't tapped into that yet, but it is intended for the department when they have reached their limit on what's in their current budget for DPP, they would be pulling out of the DPA funding.
Is it your understanding it's just because they've been having a hard time hiring and that they can't get around to using it? I'm confused by why it's in this particular, in the dedicated purpose account.
Yeah, I think it was added last year as a way, it's up to the department to determine how quickly they would want to use that and how they would use that. I suppose it hasn't been needed yet, and so they haven't used it. But the intention was to.
It's hard for me to believe it's not needed.
Yeah.
That's the part that's confusing.
They've had a history of having difficulties bringing on and filling those vacancies. I used to be the DPSES analyst, as you remember, and I've talked extensively about, we would add positions and they wouldn't fill them, and they would, have vacancy rates that were, in the 25, 30%. So I would defer to the DPP analyst to know what they're at currently, but historically, I know at least there's a good reason to have that funding.
Gotcha. Okay. I was going to ask a question about apprenticeships, but I think I'll hold for now. And now we can say it with real truthfulness. Mr. Secretary, come on down.
What do you really think of it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Jake Weissman, Secretary. First time I've said that out loud. Department of Budget Management, thank you all for your vote. To answer to your question just now, Mr. Chair, we're going to reach out to our folks as well and see if we can get you an answer on that. I want to thank Mr. Cash for his detailed analysis and all of his work in partnership. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, I know we all had conversations during the interim in the formulation of the budget about the rainy day fund and how we wanted to make sure to maintain Maryland's strong reputation of being a fiscally responsible state and introducing the budget with an 8% rainy day fund, which is about $2.2 billion of the FY27 general fund revenue. We're proud, and I know you all are, of our 3 AAA bond ratings from Fitch, S&P, and KBRA, and look forward to working together with the General Assembly to ensure Maryland remains on a fiscally responsible, sustainable path for the best service Marylanders now and the future. DBM's responses to the DLS recommendations and the analysis, going to go through them quickly, and then obviously happy to take any questions. The department concurs with DLS's recommendations, the first one, the third one, and the fourth one. On DLS recommendation number 5, on DLS recommendation number 5, which is regarding the $9.1 million, the department agrees with DLS and will correct this amount through a supplemental budget and amendment to the BRFA later this next month. Recommendation number 2 on page 6, DLS recommended deleting the $42 million for higher education research grant funding. DBM disagrees with this recommendation. Universities in Maryland have been severely impacted by the unprecedented attack on higher education by the Trump administration. Research institutions have borne much of the brunt of these attacks, with the university system in Maryland alone facing well over $100 million in lost federal research funding. Johns Hopkins University's close to $500 million in research funding, and Morgan State University has been affected as well. Appreciate that. We can skip ahead to the next one. Then on page 12, number 6, DLS recommended modifying the BRFA provision, transferring funds from the DPA to the general fund. We partially disagree with this recommendation. The comptroller has indicated that they plan to carry the remaining $931,075 into FY27 to be used as they reassess their security system posture with the launch of the new payroll and personal income tax systems and secure integrations. And then recommendation number 7 on page 13, DLS recommended adding a section that restricted funds for DBM and the Office of the Comptroller. The department would partially disagree with this recommendation. As the agency that oversees the monitoring of funding in the dedicated purpose account, we can absolutely provide the requested information, but this analysis was the first time that this specific information had been requested of DBM. and so we ask that the funds not be withheld in the DBM budget. As the Comptroller's Office handles accounting transactions, but not the monitoring of the purpose of funds, we ask that the funding not be withheld from the Office of the Comptroller. With that, we're happy to take any questions.
Questions for Senator Zucker?
Never.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No. Well, another brilliant comment. Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senator.
Look very forward to working with you.
Same.
I do have just a brief question, and you could probably provide some guidance to me. We have an issue going on down on the Potomac, very significant. It affects a lot of different issues, whether it be the watermen or the fish stock. You know, I mean, everybody was worried about the oysters, but, you know, in my opinion, we have those tens of thousands of rockfish right there that are getting ready to spawn, right? How is this going to affect, you know, that's a $7-8 billion economy for the federal government a year, right? What avenues do we have to protect, and maybe we can just follow up offline, but while we're in session, there's something we can do to try to protect some of these small business people, some of these marina owners, some of these people that are affected going forward, because the United States has never seen a spill of this magnitude. So we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I know, Senator, when we had discussed this at Republican caucus last week, Jeremy had talked about connecting you with MD. Has that happened yet?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll make sure it happens this week.
Okay.
Any other questions? I just want to, I just think it's interesting, given everything that's going on and how the challenges we face. Looking at chart exhibit number 1 on page 3, we've been utilizing the rainy day fund. This chart shows that we've not put some additional funds in to utilize that for purposes, and yet somehow, and it's a small amount, our rainy day fund is actually larger by $30 million. And somehow the administration was able to work that out amongst all the things that we're doing. And I just find that important. We added to the surplus of that money for the rainy day fund in the midst of all of this. And I just wanted to congratulate you on that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair, and thank you again. We had a lot of conversations in November and December about how to do that, and appreciate your guidance on there.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute break, quarter after, for voting. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a witness? I think there was an error. They signed up for both the previous thing also. I think it was a student. Okay, 5 minutes, we're voting.